Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to Virtual VSC. We are so happy to have you here. If you were tuning in last week, you would have seen that we've had a few episodes now where we talked to some former staff members, some alumni, and with each other. We're introducing another segment with just very quick snippets with Harlan, so we'll be introducing that later as well. Today on our show, I'm super excited to introduce the talk that Daniel is having or has had with Maria Fernanda Nuñez. She was most recently here as a fellow in February, and she's now down at Penland in North Carolina. Somehow we keep making this connection to Penland. I love hearing the way Mo talks about her work and also her energy that I think you'll be able to feel actually in this. Take it away, Daniel.
Hey.
Hey, Daniel, how's it going?
No.
How are
Good.
you?
Good. I've met you twice now at the residency, but also when you left last time, I didn't get to say goodbye.
I know. I kind of just disappeared. I decided not to say goodbye to anyone. I was just like, I'm just gonna go. And it just kind of came up really quickly. And I was just like, oh, I guess I'm leaving tomorrow.
So what were you working on?
I don't know if you saw in September kind of like the tapestry I had on the wall, which was like all tension, kind of like tension synthetic hair sculpture. So they're very much like
Yeah.
uh, I'm trying to do some of that, but kind of like off of the wall. Many, many, many strings of hair kind of like suspended in the air. I think part of what I'm like interested in that besides the tension is kind of like creating these soft curtains like of opacity that like kind of like are almost invisible. I was playing around with some like small, like very simple minimalist drawings on the wall with strands of hair, which are also almost invisible. So like I think like I'm trying to like take a little more of a minimalist approach to my work and like kind of like simplify a lot of my forms and simplify like make my forms more elegant so that like the subtleties and things kind of like show up. I'm interested in like something so small as like the knot in a strand of hair. I'm trying to figure out how to make big sculptures that help you focus in on those details. How to like take up a lot of space very subtly.
I remember that video you made of you sewing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, that is something that I've seen here that has definitely stuck with me, where you're like sewing your skin together with the hair. I don't know if it was real hair or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the focus on the material, or like this exploration in a material that we're all, aware of hair, but then also this kind of like almost vernacular, like the way that you're sewing your skin together. Like that's something that like I've experienced before, is this like really small delicate thing, and even then playing with the material of skin in that way.
Yeah, I kind of like got obsessed with hair by accident, and it's definitely been a thing where it's just like, oh, like you're like, oh, you work in hair, like why are you obsessed with hair? Like what is the thing about it? And I'm like, well, like it's just a material like a lot of other materials. And I'm like, I would like to keep on exploring it until I exhaust it. Really just like develop this material exploration of this one element. Like all of the ways in which it can be used and like the things that can come out of it. Like that video, like you could do that with thread, but the fact that like hair was so bodily and also so small, like so thin, like definitely gives it a different quality from thread. The fact that it like reflects light in this particular way or becomes invisible in this particular way or like snaps in this particular way. It's like at the base of a craft like any other material.
Yeah, and it's really cool because it's this one continuous strand, right? Like a thread is composed of like fibers,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is just
Yeah.
this like monofilament basically of time. Time is involved in that, and like
Yeah.
the body is involved in that, unless it's a synthetic, in which case it's just an extrusion. But
Yeah.
um,
And that's something like the difference between real hair and synthetic hair, something I've kind of a struggle with because even though obviously I enjoy thinking about the cells in a particular strand of hair and like the keratin and like the history and hair as being like this document or this witness to the body, is that I really enjoy the anonymity of synthetic hair because it doesn't reference a specific body. It just references hair as like anybody could contain this hair. You know, it doesn't have to be my grandma's hair or my friend's hair, and I don't have to like put it in the materialist, you know, like 50 person's hair, you know, 50 people's hair that I collected over a year or whatever. It doesn't reference anyone specific, but it references, I guess, everybody. I mean, even just the fact that we want to replicate it is kind of insane. So much of it is available everywhere in so many different forms. So definitely something we think about a lot.
How did you fall into that? We don't want to talk about hair. We also could talk about something else. But.
Yeah, I don't want to only talk about hair, but I mean, I'll just kind of like briefly touch on it because I thought I did come into it in kind of like a very specific way. Part of this research group in Portland called the Oregon Institute for Creative Research. And this was kind of like a critical theory program in which you have to write kind of like a thesis or like, you know, like develop a written project. And I'm very interested in kind of like the hybrid of theory and poetry. I'm definitely not a poet or a theorist, but I like wanted to try it anyway. One of the things that hair has been very much related to over centuries is death and the idea of like the corpse, and has been used in mourning jewelry. It has been used in like lots of things related to the dead. There's a lot of like lore that kind of connects hair to like this thing that, you know, keeps on growing after the body dies, that like doesn't quite decay. And it's this weird like myth surrounding hair of like this kind of like channel between like the living and the dead. And it just kind of became very fascinated with that because of this specific like particular loss that I'd experienced.
Sorry, you're back now. You cut out for a second.
But through researching that, I found that culturally hair has been like tremendously important for so many people.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's in like unlimited cultural references to hair. Like in scripture, like so many religions reference it because it's a concern of like whether it belongs to the body or not, because it's so much like saliva or like excrement is something we expel, and yet it's still connected to us. I always think of this this quote from the Maggie Nelson book Bluets, and she's at some point she's trying to justify why she loves blue, and she says like we just don't choose what we love. We just don't. It just comes to us in a way. So I love that. I appreciate her writing a lot.
So you're at where now?
Right now at the Penland School of Crafts. I'm a core fellow here, and the core fellowship is a 2-year program in which you take classes and live with other fellows, kind of like as a time to develop your skills and your material knowledge in all of the studios that they have available. Yeah, I mean, part of the plan was during these 2 years to really focus on craft and really focus on developing that knowledge of materials that I felt like I was lacking.
Is there a reason you picked like, well, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I find myself resorting to craft or like trying to turn to craft as just this way of like ownership. But I wonder if there's like a reason that now craft seems like an important thing for you.
Interest in craft has kind of like ebbed and flowed throughout the years. There's been times where I'm like, I don't need to make this. Like, I just want to make, you know, art, and it doesn't matter how it's made necessarily. There's been times where like I've been very much interested in how and who shapes the material, how it's made, how it's produced. And I think, I mean, obviously right now we're all in quarantine, like lots of people are talking about how do you become self-sufficient, and you don't have to be a craft person to do that, but being a craftsperson really connects you to materials in a very different way. That connection, I mean, obviously besides being very physical, has been a beautiful journey of like connecting to materials in an emotional way, like being able to look at a piece of wood and like knowing how it was cut, what tree it was cut from, like how to work it, like let's say like just the grain of wood, and like knowing how it needs to be shaped or how it needs to be transformed. That knowledge, and like knowing that that knowledge has been transferred through so many generations, I think it's really beautiful. I think the craft is a really nice way of thinking about history and like heritage and the past and how tradition moves forward.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I don't know, when you're doing something so tactile, you kind of want to turn to like the person next to you, for their knowledge
Mhm.
on how to do that. But of course now there's no one next to me.
Yeah, and it's also so much about your body, like whittling. Like I'm not very good at it, but I know people who it's just a memory that it's just something that your body remembers how to do. Your hands eventually will get used to a particular movement and will just know how to do that. I love that. I love the fact that like you may not remember, but your body remembers how to do something. Like in one of the classes here, I started blacksmithing again, and I
Cool.
hadn't done it in maybe like 4 years, and I did it for a very short period of time, but I have a very bad memory, so I didn't really remember how to do a lot of things. But I found my body very much remembered how to hit the steel. Like I could feel that like as I did it, my body remembered better than I did, and I found that super fascinating. I love
That's
that.
awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so what did you want to talk about? How you didn't say goodbye to us? I mean, I think one of the first things we ever talked about was your death research and like the morning jewelry and stuff like that. But that was as I was starting to start work on these like miniature benches. I think you say Windsor.
Hmm.
Windsor, and I
Yeah,
say
like wonder spindle chairs. Yeah.
yes. And you were just talking about like making a chair,
Uh-huh.
about your urge to make a chair. So how do you follow those urges? How do you plan ahead for those sorts of things when you've got so many different skill sets?
I think that is, and that's part of why I was interested in this program, is because I've always had kind of like random craft urges in which like, like I really want to learn how to make a chair or like a broom or like all of these like very traditional things have a process and have a history and have, like this very strict tradition of how to make things. I don't know. I think it's always been a battle within how I make of like, sometimes I just want to like, like make random videos with hair. And then sometimes I want to go and like make a chair from scratch.
Oh, like how do you pick those traditions or like which ones to chase?
I mean, I think it's been mostly thinking about the work that I like and then somehow like falling into these symbols. Like, I think for me, the symbol of the chair is very powerful, and a lot of people have used it in artwork, like Dory Salcedo to like lots of woodworkers that we talked about, Tom Shields and all of that. I think just the possibility of making this object that has been made for centuries, I think it's really captivating to me. But because I'm fascinated with the chair as an object, just like as a thing.
Well, I think you arrived at Vermont Studio Center and I was like, Mo! And you're like, I just made a broom. I don't know why that sticks in.
Oh, yeah. Well, my friend was making brooms, so he was kind of like teaching me to do that. There's a fascination with homesteading, with like how to make everything that you own, with how to make like your own tools. Yeah, I know, just being able to make these very basic things that we use every day. I think everyday objects are beautiful and fascinating, and the fact that you can like sit on a chair every day, the fact that you can like use a broom, these things that we use all of the time. I'd love to be more connected to those objects, to the objects that like are constantly in our lives. Like, like I know a lot of ceramics people feel like this, being able to like grab a cup and know that you made it with your hands, or know that like I've been making spoons and like it's the same thing. Like I've been making a bunch of steel spoons, because like it's the same feeling of like something you use all of the time, and being able to know that how not only that you made it, but that you know how it's made, that you know that it came from like a very that you know it came from like a piece of steel or like came from a tree, kind of like know its origin, know it's like arche. I think it's really nice. Yes, I think that is, let's say like in metals, that is very common. You like need to make tools that just help you like make a hole, or you need tools that make you help you put things in a particular way. And being able to do that is amazing. Being able to know like you need this one thing to do this other thing, and like being able to make the tools that you need to make an object, I think it's really, really nice. One of the things that's fascinating about metalworking is that you like, even like we were gardening yesterday, there was like a broad fork, one of those that's used to just kind of like aerate the soil. Being able to know that I can go and make that, it's really satisfying. It's like, oh, like if it's broken, like, oh, let me just go like weld one, put one together. I don't know, maybe it's just like a primordial, like some like survivalist thing where it's just like, you know how to do these things.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just love the scale at which that can exist, and like making the tool that makes the tool, you know, and like celebrating that object and celebrating the tool, but that like that in a sense, like on one scale, you're also just like crafting life around you, or like the tactile experience of using these things.
I love the use of ordinary objects, and I think there's a little bit of that I like try to get in my sculpture, of like how we use ordinary objects and how we learn to use them, and something so, and like part of it, like our body knows how to use all of these objects. Like, do you need to like learn how to make a chair? Or do you need to even think about sitting down? Do you even need to think about sweeping? There are actions that are so subtle for our bodies. We don't have to like really remember how, you know, we don't have to actively think about how to do them. I'm interested in sculptures that are so subtle, that are almost silent, that don't require, that are that subtle action, that are very, very gentle, and like have that same feeling of ease. In terms of the sculpture that I'm working on now, I'm very much interested in things that are kind of like the in-between of things, and like things changing, and like things that are hybrid, things that are liminal, things that are in transition. I mean, this is, you know, coronavirus or like whatever, like this is a transitional moment. Like we're all stuck in this house, and this being like a non-place, and a place in which like doesn't quite belong to any one world. I think objects can have that same hybridity, in which like they, you know, are taking up space but are also almost invisible, like where they like subtly belong to two things. I think that's one of the things I'm interested in trying to articulate, like hybridity and something that's in constant change, like the ebb and flow of places, and of you know, like we change as people, culture changes, traditions change, and how do you articulate that in objects or in sculpture?
I thought you said you weren't a theory person. You weren't theoretical.
I enjoy theory a lot.
You're just living in it currently.
Yeah. I mean, theory is kind of like one of the main inspirations for my work. I really believe in thinking as an end in itself. I've had mentors who I'm like terribly grateful to for, you know, helping me just have awe for the world as it is, be in total wonder and amazement. Theory can look at an object and just say, like, question every aspect of it without trying to search for a solution to that object, or like even like look at the practical things of like, how was this made? And then craft looks at exactly how this was made, and all of the past, and like how have people made it. They're two different kind of like lines in which you can like kind of like sway in between, I think. Yeah, and it's a delicate balance that I have no, you know, like I haven't figured out how to traverse. Like, how do you jump back between that questioning that theory asks you to do and the making that craft asks you to like have this very detailed and like practical mindset?
I don't know. I think your work is really impressive. So just keep doing it, and
That's really sweet.
And let the theorists talk about you.
Thanks, Daniel.
I think since this video is for VSC, I should say you should come here.
I will go to VSC as many times as they'll have me.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you so much, both of you. That was really, really great and insightful, and actually makes me want to investigate making with my hands more. So thanks for that. And speaking of working with our hands, up next is Harlan Mack and his life lessons.
Hey everybody, this is Harlan, and I'm going to show you how to take a nail out of a board. Everybody should know how to take a nail out of a board. There we go. Pretty simple. In order to stay safe, we want to take the nail out. So we flip the board around. We hit the back of it like so. turn it around, put the claw end of the hammer. So, oh, that's not going to work. So you want to go this way so it doesn't tip out. There we go. Might seem like common sense, but you'd be surprised at how difficult that is for some people. It's all about the leverage. Sometimes you can't get the leverage that you want. Like this looks like it's going to get leverage. That it did. So what if it was more difficult than that? I've seen people, including myself, put something up here to increase the leverage, make it much easier to get out. You always want to pick up the nails afterward to save them. These little bent nails. You want to save the nails.
Man, I can't wait for tomorrow or Wednesday, whenever we air next. And now we have Sarah with the weather. Sarah? Sarah?
Hi.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for another wonderful day. I would say morning. I guess by the time you're watching this, it's early afternoon. I hope you have a fabulous Monday. We'll see you again on Wednesday. Yeah. All right. Take care. Bye.